Hello and welcome to Around the Nest. Jay talking our way around the Toronto Blue Jays minor league system, going from affiliate to affiliate and hearing the ins and outs from every single team and that Jays organizational ladder. I'm Jesse Goldberg, Strassler of the Class A Lansing Lugnuts, and let's begin this week with Rob Fay of the Vancouver Canadians. Rob, how are you?
I'm well, Jesse. Thanks for having me.
Well, happy new season's begun. We're a week into the season. Vancouver is now back home. First, how were your initial 7 days?
Well, it was 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. There were flashes where we looked at each other and said, wow, this is a team that's overachieving. And then there were moments where we looked at each other and said, yeah, this is pretty much what we thought we would be. It's a bit of a thin year for us when it comes to the talent pool, Jesse, and that's with all due respect to the players. But we'll get our first look at Jon Harris, the 2015 first-rounder, who, of course, comes out of Missouri State, so we'll get to see him front and center in front of 6,000 people as the home opener here in Vancouver is sold out tonight. And Clinton Holland has had a couple of good starts, the former second-rounder, who, of course, had Tommy John surgery a year ago, has bounced back nicely. But the pitching's there. The offense is really what started to, struggle mightily after the opener when we won 11-2, 11 runs on 14 hits. Everybody thought, wow, this is going to be another great season for the good ship Canadians, but it has been few and far between over the last couple of games. The last game that we played, we lost by a score of 9-3, and the final 19 hitters in a row for the Canadians retired in order, so the offense looking for answers.
I seem to recall Canadians teams of the past that once they came out of the blocks, maybe they played 500 ball. The C's managed to find a way to turn things on when the going really gets tough and those games start to matter. Have there been a Canadian team, let's say in the recent past, in those last couple of years, and maybe started off the season not so well before finding that second gear?
Well, it was funny. Jim Sykowski, the pitching coach for the Canadians last year, he was in New Hampshire, and he came back this year, and he's back with us. And we were actually kind of laughing on the bus the other day, saying that of the 3 championships that we won in the 6 halves that were available, the Canadians only won 2 halves. So we've gotten in by tiebreakers here, tiebreakers there, and once we get into the postseason, Vancouver, of course, a very tough place to play with the environment that we present. But I wouldn't say that we backdoor it every year. 2011 maybe so, 2012 kinda, 2013 we had 46 wins against 30 losses, so I'd like to think we walked through the front door in that year. But even last year's team was another team that had 46 wins, and you had Ryan McBroom and Franklin Barreto and Tim LaCastro and Ramon Fields, and wins and losses aside, you knew you were looking at Blue Jay prospects, and this year, I have to be honest with you, it has been a slow start in that regard, and really we're hoping that maybe we can have some undiscovered diamond in the rough that comes through, because in the first 8 games, it has been very vanilla for the Vancouver Canadians.
Let's talk about Jon Harris. When did you first hear that the Blue Jays draft pick was going to debut with you?
He was actually right out of the gates. Of course, you got to think of the experience that he's got at the collegiate level. Combine that with the fact that he's played some Cape Cod baseball, and there was enough there that you thought, well, maybe we'll send him to the college circuit, which some people say the Northwest League is. So it was shortly after he signed, and that was good news for us, just based on the fact that we didn't have a bona fide number 1 coming into the season, and that is also kind of uncharted territory to us. You got to remember, we joined the organization, the Toronto Blue Jays organization, back in 2011, and it's almost been an embarrassment of riches. Every year there's always been 2 or 3 guys that you could really pin that ace hat on. Everybody from Justin Nicolino to Aaron Sanchez, Marcus Stroman in 2012, along with Taylor Cole and Javier Avendano. It just seems that every year there was always 1 or 2 guys, and we were looking for that. Clinton Holland in the debut pitched well, but when you get 11 runs in support, pretty easy to pitch certain games. But when it comes to Jon Harris, there are 2 trains of thought. One is he's electrifying, the stuff that you've seen at Missouri State, well worth the price of admission. But I got to be honest with you, man, I look at this guy, and he is probably the thinnest guy that I've ever seen come through town in a pitching mode. He is frail, which makes me look at him and I say, you know what, he's going to have to get on the off-season weight program, and our strength and conditioning guy, Pat Smack, is going to have his work cut out for him. With
Harris, with him coming in, and let's look back, because I want to bring you back to 2011 when you had Nicolino, when you had Noah Syndergaard. Do you ever think back to those teams, that initial Vancouver Canadians affiliated with the Toronto Blue Jays club, and say, well, this has been lucky, having some of the finest talent to come through, and now we actually get to see their major league impact?
Well, you're half proud, and then you have to look back and say, well, how did I grade those three? Because over the course of 2011, as you had in the following year, 2012, the three-headed monster all came through Vancouver as they did in Lansing. And I graded Nicolino to be the first guy that I thought would get to the majors, Syndergaard second, and Sanchez third. Just goes to show my astuteness as a broadcaster. I got it completely backwards. But having said that, you're looking at three guys at Bonafide will probably have lengthy careers in the major leagues. And, I've been on the radio show here in Vancouver for the past couple of weeks just palming my face, realizing how good Noah Syndergaard's going to be for a long time. And I understand that move for Alex Anthopoulos. I understand the fact that you do go out and you get a reigning Cy Young Award winner, but it does cost you a pretty penny. And, it was almost a no-win situation for R.A. Dickey to come in and do what he had to do over 2 years, knowing that eventually Noah Syndergaard was going to get to the major leagues and become what he has become. So, it's cool to see. Marcus Stroman was another guy a year later that you kind of knew was just going to find his way to the major leagues. So it has been a lot of fun to watch these guys.
How about a year later for Jairo Labourt? You have him last year after he is dropped down from Lansing. And now we learn that he's going to be pitching in the MiLB Futures game representing the World Team. I'm the Toronto Blue Jays' only representative. What did you see from Jairo last year?
I saw competitiveness. I saw fire that I don't think I saw the year before, and I don't know if you saw it early on. And sometimes you're a creature of culture, and I don't know if a lot of fans that maybe just come out once in a while see it, but we're very fortunate as broadcasters that we see them at the hotel, and we see them in the clubhouse, and we see them in all facets of their life. And sometimes it's just having the right group of people around you at the right times and getting the right influences. And I felt like Jairo Labourt was kind of a ship out at sea in 2012, and then in 2013, I just thought that, God, there's this kid with all this ability, but it just doesn't seem like the compass in his hand is working and the ship's just kind of going where it goes. Whereas something clicked for Jairo in 2014. There was a positivity. There was an energy. He stopped moaning and complaining. I remember in 2013, he would get pulled from a game. Clayton McCullough, he's one of the nicest guys you'll ever come across in the game of baseball, and Jairo would stomp off the mound and he would, throw his hat in the dugout, and it wasn't what you wanted from an upper-tier prospect. But then fast forward, and all of a sudden Jairo was more of a man, more mature, understood his place and what he could accomplish. And that, for me, having him alongside a guy like Miguel Castro, having that, again, positive influence, because Miguel would sit there and do nothing but watch Pedro Martinez videos for 5 hours on his iPad. Those are the kind of people that you want to surround a guy like Jairo Labourt with, so that you can get that maturity out of him and you can see him grow up, because he's got all the potential in the world, and now we're starting to see it come to fruition.
We're joined right now by Rob Fay, the great voice of the Vancouver Canadians, right at the start of the Vancouver season. Rob, was there a Canadian whom you saw come the farthest from the start of the season to the end of the season, to progress the most?
That's a great question and a tricky question, because you can look at a couple of different people. I remember Taylor Cole, and Cole, of course, took a couple of years off to do a mission, and he did that mission, ironically, in Toronto. But there was a guy that one year struggled, and everybody thought, boy, here's a high-end draft pick that's going to, not come to be, and all of a sudden you see him emerge into one of the greatest pitchers that I've ever seen come through this circuit. And then you see a guy like Ramon Fields, who had no expectation, no rhyme or reason, and then just this past week we see him get promoted to AA New Hampshire. And again, I was talking to Jim Sykowski last night on the bus ride home back from Tri-City, and I said, Ramon, that's a big jump all of a sudden. Last year in Vancouver, now all of a sudden in AA, and it didn't even blink. And Dave Pano, the hitting coach, got in the conversation as well, and they said he is the best outfielder in the organization, bar none, and they wouldn't be surprised come September if the Blue Jays need a little speed that Ramon finds his way into the blue of the Toronto Blue Jays, which would be, again, an extraordinary story.
Lastly, with Rob Fay, a question from Bluebird Banter, partnered up with SB Nation. We've seen some Kennesaw State Owls come through the Blue Jays organization. Chad Jenkins, Max Pentecost, you had as your starting catcher last year. Arguably, the top and the most eye-catching performance in the young season was turned in by Travis Bergen. 8 strikeouts, 3 hitless, scoreless innings. What made him so effective?
His slider was fantastic. He spotted it inside. He worked it away from right-handed hitters, and he was a force. And the thing that I really liked about him was he was a challenging pitcher. He came right at you. He said, this is my stuff. If you're better than me, you're going to put this ball in play. If not, you're probably going to go sit down and wait for your next turn. He was extraordinary. I think I've only seen one performance, maybe more dominant from a strikeout perspective, and you got to go back a couple of years ago to when we had Roberto Osuna, who in 5 innings struck out 13 Everett Aqua Sox, which I still remember Pat Dillon, the voice of Everett, saying, boy, he had never seen anything like it. But I tell you what, the one thing that I really liked about Travis was just his aggressiveness and the fact that every pitch was a strike. There was no wasting pitches. There was no setting up secondary pitches. It was just here it is, hit it. And he doesn't even have overpowering stuff, but he's got the ability to locate. And that reminded me a little bit of Justin Nicolino. Nicolino was a guy that didn't really have overpowering stuff, but of the three-headed monster that we spoke of, was probably the most true of the three when it came to just sheer pitching. And I'd like to think that we got a little bit of that in Travis Bergen early on. Now, can he keep that going? I doubt that pace. But the one thing that you can say is from a compete standpoint, he's right at the top of the list.
Find Rob Fay on Twitter at RobFayNation. Meanwhile, the Vancouver Canadians home tonight. Jon Harris on the mound. Opening night fireworks for the home opener at Nat Bailey Stadium. Go to CanadiansBaseball.com as Vancouver opens up its home schedule and looks to return to the Northwest League Championship Series, and this time win it after going down last year. Rob, thank you very much for the time, and hopefully till next week.
Well, my pleasure, and good luck to you guys in the postseason, and congratulations to you and the Lugnuts, Jesse.
Rob, thank you very much. From Vancouver, we mosey our way up the ladder, all the way up to AAA, and bring on Ben Wagner, the voice of the Buffalo Bisons. Ben, how's by you?
Everything's good. Nice little win for the Herd. Great day for Brad Glenn, and a fresh backdrop for 2015 as Buffalo arrives on Montage Mountain for the first time.
Beautiful. Let's begin with Devon Travis. There were Toronto Blue Jays fans who were thinking, all right, when's Travis going to come on back up after he went down on the DL? And now he returns. But before he returns up to the major league level, he supplies you 3 hits in yesterday's game. Did you get the feeling with his recent performance as that rehab went, all right, now he's ready for the show once more?
Maybe even more than the 3 hits, but the way that he played the game the last couple of days, aggressively on the base paths. Obviously, he's going to challenge himself defensively, and he made a couple of fantastic plays towards the middle and back into the hole from a second base position while we were in Syracuse. But the last couple of days, you saw Devon Travis find a different gear. Like the lights had were just about to come on. Like he knew his time was winding down, and not only did he want to challenge himself while he was out there, but he wanted to challenge his body. And the abuse that he did on the shoulder plus the arm and, that collarbone area, diving into bags and aggressively tagging from first on a ball that was just caught at the edge of the warning track and then tagging and safely diving into second base. Those are the kind of things that I think started to really ratchet up Devon Travis. And he did so in front of Alex Anthopoulos yesterday, and it was a no-brainer. Watching him play, the timing was back at the plate, and there had been some up and downs, over the last 11 days with Devon where he felt his pitch recognition wasn't as sharp as it wanted to be. But over the last couple of days, Devon got more and more positive about his overall performance.
Let's step back a bit. You started things off by talking about Brad Glenn, and he had that big 5 RBI game yesterday, 3 hits in his own right, matching Devon Travis. Glenn is known for his bat. Last year, that bat helped him make his major league debut, and this season was a struggle for him. Did not cross 200 until May 13th. How is his bat coming along?
He, as many people know that have tracked him through the organization, he's a very streaky hitter. When he gets hot, he is about as hot as any player on the planet can get. But when he cools off, he goes into some pretty bad slumps. One other thing, too, that have really marred him the last couple of years is staying on the field. Now, that being said, he was out of the lineup and unavailable for the last handful of days. Got back in there, was really challenged by Aaron Nola, the Phillies' top pitching prospect. Did not look very comfortable in the batter's box. Hopped in there yesterday after a couple of adjustments, looked calmer at the plate, and the results speak for themselves. For Brad, coupling those two things. One, he was just unavailable with a stiff back and out of the lineup and, feeling pretty down in the dumps about it because he just felt like he started to get things cranking. Then all of a sudden you have to go out and you have to face Aaron Nola, who's putting up Nintendo-like numbers this season through AA and through his first 2 starts at AAA. and looked all sort of discombobulated, but then got everything going right yesterday for the Bison. So hopefully this is kind of where the warm turns, so to speak, for Brad, and he's back in there. He's in the lineup again today, which is great news as well in terms of health when guys play back-to-back days.
Love talking about Toronto Blue Jays farmhands and everything going on in the system. Aaron Nola's been a story. It's been Nola against Daniel Norris. It's been prospect against prospect. And you've been really impressed with the Phillies' young first-rounder.
Yeah, two top organization prospects, guys that have a lot vested in them and, of course, a lot of pressure on them to succeed. We all know about Daniel Norris and his rise rapidly through the organization last year, but also now seeing the same thing from Aaron Nola. I like his stuff. You know, he throws a ton of strikes, and he's always around the zone. Hardly ever does he miss out over the plate. That's one thing that has made him a great separator in terms of where he's at right now, and just making 2 AAA starts against a very veteran lineup that Buffalo has run at him. I think that speaks really, really good accolades. One about the deception, too, and that's what I hear, that he's a little deceptive on the mound because he flies open with the glove hand. Then all of a sudden that elbow you see exposed, and then the ball just kind of appears from around his ear, essentially. So the deception plus, the pure stuff. And the fastball is not overpowering. He's not a flamethrower by any stretch of the imagination. But the fastball, curveball that we saw a lot yesterday, and the changeup plus the slide piece make him definitely on the Phillies' radar. And I know Ruben Amaro Jr., even before he made his AAA debut in Allentown, had already said there's a guy that will be in the big leagues this year because we're the Phillies, honestly, So might as well test him out and get his feet wet.
On the other side from him was Daniel Norris. Norris is a very honest, very sincere guy. John Lott just wrote an article about him, about Norris, saying hey, he's trying not to be frustrated. The numbers in some respects look very good. The strikeouts are high. The walks have been going down since he's been in Buffalo. How has he looked to you in terms of from where he started after getting demoted from the major leagues to his most recent outing?
Well, there's definite improvement from where he was in terms of mechanics. They've tightened up a couple of things. I know they're still trying to hone in on where his shoulders and lead the head as well because he's flying open a little bit, and then all of a sudden that head rocks back off to the side, and that's where he loses command. I think the overall body of work, while on the rise for Daniel Norris, has been very good. There always seems to be one inning out of every start that you think, well, that's where it kind of fell apart for Daniel. But at the same time, you look at that record and you think, how can this guy put up some of those positive numbers that you mentioned, Jesse, and have 7 losses? Buffalo's offense has been anemic for whatever reason anytime that he's on the mound. In fact, in the first 6 losses combined, the Bisons had only totaled 6 runs in support. That's total. So Daniel never has an opportunity to go to the mound and pitch with a little wiggle room. He wants to position his team every night out for the best case scenario, and that's to win ball games, and he wants to pitch deep into those ball games as well, and while managing his pitch count. Again, you couple those things plus his ability to, one, think about being too fine on the mound because he doesn't want to get burned by a mistake early in one inning every time out. That seems to be where a couple of bleeders will maybe die in, and then there's a walk that magnifies things, or perhaps it's just a leadoff walk where he's trying to find his zone or his release point when he goes out to start an inning. So those are just the couple of things, that I've noticed, and I've talked to some scouts. What are they seeing? What are we comparing notes on? And it all seems to be positive from where Daniel Norris is. And let's not forget, he's still 22 years old, and he's been thrust into a huge light, and he's got a lot of pressure on him.
This is Ben Wagner, voice of the Buffalo Bisons on Around the Nest. Ben, on a more serious note, are you a celery stalker?
Of course I am. In fact, I'm doubly the stalking because I've got the gray shirt and the green shirt already.
Love it. I'm rooting celery on. I don't know if it's in the cards, but maybe one of these days, right? Celery's due.
I don't know, but I'll say I am the stalk following. It's beyond a cult following. Like it's its own little garden of celery, which is the main attraction night in and night out for our on-field promotions. When the wing, the blue cheese, the celery, sometimes the atomic wing will make an appearance. Sometimes the carrot appears out of the dugout and he wrecks things. His celery may be down the stretch, trying to nab that first elusive victory. I will say that it also, our shows also go to all these T-shirts also go to a great cause, that's why you referenced the Celery Stalker with the hashtag in the image of celery on the T-shirts. We partnered up with a great company based in Buffalo called 26 Shirts. Every 2 weeks they come up with a specific shirt design. Once that 2 weeks elapses, that design will never be used again. And this is the 2-week window that the Bisons have partnered with 26 Shirts to raise money for families and foundations, and specifically this shirt to the Bisons Charitable Foundation that the Buffalo Bisons operate. And this is the one chance. So if you've been to a Bisons game and you love the WCC race, wing, cheese, celery race that we have night in and night out, it's one and done. So here's the opportunity to get the shirt.
Go to bisons.com, hashtag Celery Stalkers, go green. Ben, our question of the week is actually something that you and I have discussed, but not specifically in this format, and it's anticipated debuts. I just spoke with Rob Fay. Jon Harris is going to the mound. As Rob Fay would describe him, the very skinny Jon Harris. There are a lot of folks in Vancouver and in the Toronto Blue Jays minor league organization, rooters of the Blue Jays, aficionados of minor league prospects, guys who are simply interested in seeing how Jon does tonight. For you, what's the most anticipated, or what are the most anticipated debuts that you can remember?
Oh, the ones that I can remember, you can go back to even 2007, 2008, when Adam Miller was the top prospect in the Cleveland Indians organization, flame-throwing right-hander. Injuries derailed his career. I can think of Asdrubal Cabrera coming up to play the middle of the diamond in Buffalo. That was really one that I was very much looking forward to. More present day in the Mets affiliation, Ike Davis, who almost made the major league team in 2009, had an unbelievable spring training, odd man out when it came to the roster cuts at the very, very final end of camp that year, played first base, hit almost 400 the first couple of weeks with the Buffalo Bisons, and they had a lot of dead weight. They had some dead weight on the roster, so once Ike proved that he's going to go out and hit 400 until they called him up, he was going to continue to do so. And finally, they made the roster move, and sayonara to the minor leagues, at least in Buffalo's perspective, for Ike Davis. And then, of course, Matt Harvey. Most notably, I would say Matt Harvey. And with the Blue Jays affiliation, wow, the arms. Drew Hutchinson, I had not seen in the organization, and he was part of the Bison's opening day roster. Go back to Aaron Sanchez when we finally got to see him at AAA. Marcus Stroman had the ball on opening day last year. Of course, Daniel Norris and his rapid rise. I was really excited about Kendall Graveman, too, when he arrived. And last year, seeing what Scott Copeland could do, because we kept getting rave reviews about this guy named Scott Copeland. And, of course, now he's taken his ability all the way to the major leagues. So, most recently, though, the guy that sits in limbo. What's going to happen with Matt Boyd? I had Matt Boyd on my radar coming out of spring training. I was not at all surprised talking with some people, the numbers that he put up while he was at AA, and he has been fantastic through his first true turns in the rotation with the Bisons.
Is it a true mystery right now with Matt? Is everyone simply waiting?
Well, I think the Blue Jays have to decide what they want to do, because I think the biggest question mark is, what are they going to do outside Mark Burley today? Because Blue Jays PR said the Blue Jays will be announced on Saturday and on Sunday. Now, Gary Allenson said in his post-game comments yesterday that Matt Boyd is getting bumped back for a little bit of extra rest, which is true. They've done that in the past, which he noted. But he also mentioned that Matt Boyd would start on Saturday, although he didn't give the venue, whether it's going to be PNC Field here in Moosic, Pennsylvania, or will it be Rogers Center against the Chicago White Sox at a Major League debut.
Ben Wagner with the Buffalo Bisons. They're on the road, so tune in to him in Buffalo tonight from Scranton Wilkes-Barre. And then right on back home next Monday, taking on Gwinnett. You can find Ben on Twitter at BenWag247, the Buffalo Bisons, bisons.com, and support, once again, hashtag Celery Stalkers, get your shirt. Ben, thank you.
Thank you, Jesse.
From Ben Wagner in AAA, let's mosey our way down. Off to A Advanced in the Florida State League, and Marshall Kellner, the voice of the Dunedin Blue Jays. Marshall, how does life find you today?
I'm good, Jesse. How are you? I'm in Clearwater, so the old 10-minute road trip.
Well, beautiful. You just collected a trio of the Lansing Lugnuts' best prospects. The All-Star break came and went. Anthony Alford, Rowdy, Tellez, Chase Young now with you. And you got your first look at Rowdy and Anthony yesterday. Alford 0 for 5, but he scored a run. Rowdy, Tellez immediately a couple of base hits. And suddenly I look at your offense, and though you fell in defeat a night ago, it looks to me like the DJs can score some runs.
Yeah, and that's what we've been needing really all season long. Until very recently, the DJs were last in the league in hitting and pitching, but they had a terrific homestand just before the All-Star break, went 5-2 and averaged nearly 7 runs per game. And now, like you said, adding those 2 bats are huge. There were actually 9 moves affecting the DJs roster yesterday, so it's a busy day for us. And Rowdy and Anthony were in the lineup. Anthony batted leadoff, and Rowdy Tellez in the cleanup spot. Didn't hit the ball very hard, but did pick up a couple of base hits, as you mentioned, and an RBI. And just looking at him, it's amazing how big he is. I saw him in spring training, but kind of forgot just how big a man Rowdy Tellez is, and he's only 20 years old. So he becomes the youngest member of this roster, joins a couple of other 20-year-old, Dawel Lugo and Alberto Tirado. It's going to be very interesting to see how this DJ's offense plays in the second half, because they've had their moments, but they've also had droughts where they have gone on long offensive slumps. And I think now you just look at the lineup here tonight, and it's pretty much the same lineup outside of the number 9 hole. Rowdy Tellez batting 4th. Matt Dean is now 5th. Mitch Ney is now 6th, and Lugo pushed down to 7th. So it really extends the lineup. Roman Fields was promoted to Double-A, so Anthony Alford takes his spot in the leadoff spot and in center field. So very, very exciting time here with the DJs to see if the second half just started last night. It was a heartbreaking loss, but you just saw the potential with 4 runs, down 6-3 in the bottom half of the 7th inning. They exploded for 4 runs, and if not for a blown save in the 9th, they would have won it. So this offense, definitely a lot of optimism around it.
That's awesome. Roman Fields, promoted up to Double-A New Hampshire. I bet you saw this coming. What was the reaction?
I think everybody's happy for him. He's a great kid, a very, very soft-spoken guy, mild manner, but just comes to work every day. And, I mean, he works extremely hard on his bunting, as I've mentioned before on this program. And just overall, I mean, he told me that last offseason was the first time he has ever hit in the offseason, because he played NAIA baseball in college, also ran track, and he's still raw. He's only 24 years old, or he is 24 years old, which is kind of older for the high A level, but he's raw. And he accelerated his development very, very quickly. And I thought, he might get to Double-A at some point this year. I'm not sure. I thought it would be really at the halfway point of the season, but it's an excellent opportunity for him. And now we'll really see what he can do, because that jump, as we know, from high A to Double-A is a big one. But I think, speed travels pretty well. And he has first-class speed, elite speed, especially out of the left-handed batter's box, so that makes him even faster. He can bunt, and he's really learned to hit throughout this season, and you can see the improvement day by day. So very happy for him.
Meanwhile, in the starting rotation, Chase Young joins what is becoming a fairly vaunted starting rotation. Let's start with Jairo Labourt. Gets named the Futures Game. Only Toronto Blue Jays minor league farmhand will be representing the organization, playing on the world team. Jairo Labourt on a national stage. What do you think?
That's pretty cool. I mean, only 21 years old, not only the only Toronto Blue Jay, but the only left-handed pitcher on the entire world team. So that's pretty cool as well. And he's really thrown his best here lately. Has walked 9 in his last 2 starts, but before that was really starting to improve with control numbers. That's always what you look for him. When he throws the ball over the plate, they really can't hit him. But he has those spurts, and it's not even a whole game where he's off. It's just maybe an inning or 2. And if he can improve that fastball command, and like I said, he already has, but 32 walks in 52 innings, much, much better than he showed last year when he had to get sent back to extended spring training. And let's not forget, he's still 21, as I already said. So exciting for him that he can be showcased on that stage because he has a power fastball, great slider, improving changeup as well. He's left-handed, big guy. Should be exciting. He's a big-time prospect.
What is Jeff Hoffman working on right now?
I think the thing with Jeff is you saw outstanding control. His first 3 outings and then his next 3, he walked 3 in each outing. He's started games generally very, very well. He's just had 1 inning get away from him at times. So I think what he's working on is keeping the fastball down. That's the key, I think, for Jeff Hoffman right now. When it's been up, he's been hit. When it's down in the zone, they can't touch it. It's 95 to 98 miles an hour consistently. He's hit 100 miles an hour a few times, and his curveball's absolutely outstanding. So I think the big thing right now, keeping the fastball down in the zone, as Vince Horstman emphasizes, that's the number 1 key. Fastball command to both sides of the plate down in the zone, and Jeff is still working to perfect that. But also, let's not forget with him, this is his first professional season coming off of Tommy John surgery. So I know the expectations are high, but and he'll get there eventually. But he's still working out that fastball command.
An initial question from Bluebird Banter. Any news on how happy any of your All-Star participants were regarding their experience?
Both were very happy. I talked to Alberto Tirado, and only 20 years old, to be selected to the All-Star game is awesome. And then Will Browning, who had just come back down from Double-A. We actually had 4 selections. Jimmy Cordero and Chad Girado were in Double-A. Will Browning and Alberto Tirado were here. But Girado went up to Double-A, and Browning came back down. And now Browning is back up again, well-deserved. But he came in the All-Star game, 2 batters, 8 pitches, 2 strikeouts, and he finished his time with the DJs, hopefully permanently, with 16 consecutive scoreless appearances, a .44 ERA on the season, and the batters simply can't touch him at this level. We saw some swings the other night from some Tampa Yankees in the other batters in the left-handed batter's box with his filthy slider. So awesome for Will Browning. He had a great time at the All-Star game, and Alberto Tirado did as well.
We'll check in with Bob Lippman of Double-A New Hampshire in just a moment. First, one final question from Bluebird Banter before our question of the week from Marshall Kellner, voice of the Dunedin Blue Jays. This question is, does Dunedin have a better shot at succeeding in the second half than they did in the first half?
I think no question about it. There's a lot of parity in the North Division in the Florida State League. Clearwater came back and was down 5 with 5 games to go, actually edged out Daytona for the division title. And the DJs finished 5th out of 6 teams, but we're only 5 games back of Clearwater. The only dominant team in this league has been the Charlotte Stonecrabs, the Rays affiliate. So just from that perspective alone, I think really it's anybody's ball game. But you look at the guys that we just got from your Lansing team, Jesse, and more possibly to come at some point during the second half. The improved starting rotation, that's going to help things, and the Blue Jays have been pitching a lot better lately. The bullpen is my big question mark. Without Will Browning, without Chad Girado, without Jimmy Cordero, Tirado still very effective, and just got Eric Sakula, who was the outstanding closer for the DJs last year, so that should help as well. Miguel Castro is supposed to pitch actually tonight, but he shouldn't be here that long. That's the big question. Can they close games, because they were so good doing it when Browning was there. It's going to be tough to replicate that production, and we already saw a blown save last night. But the lineup is better, the starting rotation is better, and the parity in the division will certainly allow them to compete. They just can't dig themselves a big hole like they did in the first half, because April was probably their worst month, both pitching and hitting. So if they can get off to a good start here, I like their chance.
I love it. And with your box score, with the starting lineup that you're putting out there and the intrigue in your starting rotation, and I know that Tirado blew the save yesterday, but Alberto Tirado is such great stuff. Boy, Dunedin is worth keeping a sharp eye toward. Question of the week.
Yeah, and Alberto, Alberto has been phenomenal all year, and he actually had 2 saves, one of 4 innings, one of 3 in the third innings. Sometimes he's off with his fastball command, but when he's on, I think he can close down games well. So it's going to be tough, as I said, to replicate what Browning did, but they'll be in pretty good hands with Jairo.
Sounds good. All right, so the week was inspired by Jon Harris's debut tonight for the Vancouver Canadians. Anticipated debuts, guys, you were looking forward to seeing. I suppose we start off with Jeff Hoffman. Who comes to mind for you?
Well, no question. Jeff Hoffman, professional start, 9th overall pick. There were a ton of scouts here, some media in attendance, and everybody was just buzzing about what the big right-hander was going to do, and he showcased that electric stuff from day one, and it hasn't stopped. I think other debuts. I was in AA Harrisburg a couple of years ago in the Nationals organization. We had Anthony Rendon as our opening day third baseman, so that was a big time debut. Other ones, A.J. Cole was a right-handed pitcher who came up from high A, debuted with Harrisburg that year and made his big league debut with the Nationals this year. And I think Anthony Alford just last night, and Rowdy Tellez, two guys who are very high on the radar of people watching these Blue Jays prospects. They're going to be fun to watch, and they already gave a spark to the lineup last night. So those are a few that come to mind. Anthony Rendon is probably the best hitter I've ever seen in the minor leagues, and it was really, really cool to have him as our opening day third baseman a couple of years ago in Harrisburg. And also some players in that league that year. Noah Syndergaard pitched for the Binghamton Mets. Travis d'Arnaud, the catcher, two former Blue Jays farmhands there. And you had Maikel Franco, who made big headlines this past week, had an incredible week. He debuted that year in AA and got to see him. So a lot of good players, but certainly the biggest this year was Jeff Hoffman. And hopefully we'll see more from Lansing. And once again, congratulations to you. I talked to a scout this week that said that Lansing team is one of the best minor league teams he's ever seen. And he's been in scouting for over 20 years.
Wow. I'll relay that to David Fine, my broadcast colleague. Rowdy Tellez, if he starts going to left center, left field, you watch out. When he uses the whole field, his bat is special, and he is developed for his young age as a heck of a hitter. And Anthony Alford gets deep into the count, but when he drops the bat down, he's got power. He's got a stroke the other way. I think you're very much going to enjoy watching those two guys. And when Chase DeYoung takes the mound, it's going to be very fun for us here in Lansing to see if he can keep his success going. Because by the time he was done in the Midwest League, he was putting up goose eggs, and he was pitching above all the batters that he was facing. So best of luck, and enjoy yourself.
He's going to start. He's going to start on Sunday. Actually, it's going to be Jeff Hoffman and Chase DeYoung, 1 and 2, in a series that begins against Fort Myers tomorrow. So that should be very exciting.
Marshall, thank you very much.
Thanks, Jesse. Appreciate it.
From Marshall Kellner, and you can find him on Twitter at Marshall Kellner, the Dunedin Blue Jays, and the Florida State League. We journey up the ladder, promote ourselves up to AA New Hampshire, the Fisher Cats, and Bob Lipman. Bob, how are you?
Great, Jesse. Hi, everybody, and getting ready for our fourth and final game against our rivals, the Portland Sea Dogs, tonight at 7 o'clock.
Well, let's look back to yesterday. How about the Fisher Cats scoring 3 runs in the bottom of the 8th inning and rallying to the win against Portland?
Yeah, it's actually been back-to-back nights that the Fisher Cats have gone late into the ball game to rally to catch Portland, and the Sea Dogs have really struggled this year putting games away, and they booted a ball there to start the 8th inning. Ian Parmley with a double. That knocked in 1 run to tie the game. John Burney hit by a pitch. Dwight Smith Jr. an RBI, and then Kevin Nolan added 1 as well, and the Fisher Cats now with a chance to win this series against the Sea Dogs.
Has there been any difference in New Hampshire recently? Has there been a spark in the lineup? What is going on with this team? That I remember the offense has not put up the most consistent numbers, and yet they've got that heart, and you guys have a share of resilient comeback wins.
Yeah, last night was the 7th win in our last at-bat this year. Seemed like a lot of them happened early, though, didn't it? The first half of June, the offense really struggled for the Fisher Cats, and then the starting pitching kind of went south a little bit. Starters now have kind of come back a little bit, and we've put Dalton Pompey in at the top of the order, and he clearly has been a big addition to the Fisher Cats. I've watched both Casey Hobson and Kevin Nolan have pretty good homestands. So the Fisher Cats already with a winning homestand, and we'll see if we can finish things off tonight. Austin Bivens-Dirks is the go-to guy here for the Fisher Cats in the final game of this homestand.
And you know I root for hyphenated guys. Dalton Pompey. As Dalton Pompey joined the team, and that bat has gotten going, and I know in recent games the hits haven't been as plentiful, but the power has been there, and another home run just recently. How is he looking to you in his second go-round in Double-A?
He's fine. He has 5 home runs, Jesse, in 61 at-bats with the Fisher Cats. As it turns out, he had, wrapped between last summer and his appearances this year, set the Fisher Cat record with a 24-game hit streak that unfortunately ended on Monday when he was hit in the head in the 3rd inning and had to leave the ball game. So he took an 0-for-1 and a hit by pitch and lost the hit streak. Well, after sitting out a couple of days, Pompey led off the bottom of the 1st inning yesterday and hit our first leadoff home run since Kevin Pillar did it a couple of years ago. Looks tremendous in the outfield, made some great catches. And he's not long for New Hampshire, but for right now, we certainly can use all that his experience can bring to the table.
Dalton Pompey has joined you, and another very, very fast outfielder also joins the team. I was just talking to Marshall Kellner about Roman Fields, who moves up from Dunedin up to New Hampshire. What does Fields add to the New Hampshire Fisher Cats?
Yeah, and in fact, Fields will make his Double-A debut tonight. Center field, he'll follow Pompey in the order. I think it says a lot that Toronto has Bobby Meacham playing Pompey in left and Fields in center. So after a couple of weeks here where we went with infielders playing in the outfield, it's nice to get the promotion of a guy here to Double-A, and we'll see what he can do with the bat.
On the other side, you've received some other guys from Dunedin, and I'm looking right into your bullpen. There's Will Browning. There's Chad Jairo. How have they contributed?
Jairo has certainly impressed right off the bat here. He's unscored upon as a Fisher Cat. Worked last night. Got us 2 scoreless innings to back up John Anderson, and so he's appeared in 4 ball games. Browning is, and I'm not sure why, has had some really good outings. His last one, when he was with the Fisher Cats 3 weeks ago, was not a good one, so we'll see if he can bounce back here at the Double-A level, and it's the next test for him. We'd always been tremendous in the Florida State League, and now it's time to step it up one level. And Browning will work out of our bullpen here. So you've got 2 guys coming around the side, one with each arm.
I'm looking right now at the Eastern League standings, and there's New Hampshire at 33-38, 6 games back of first place New Britain. But the Fisher Cats are 21-18 at home. And over in the Western Division, the Eastern Division, 4 out of the 5 teams are 500 or better at home. In the Western Division, again, when I say 4 out of 5, I mean 5 out of 6. And in the Western Division, again, there are 5 out of 6 teams that are playing above 500 ball at home. Why is the home field advantage so pronounced in the Eastern League?
Maybe the only thing you can attribute it to, and I need to kind of break it down, is when you take a look at the two divisions and the travel involved. Maybe our league with the 12-hour bus rides from New Hampshire, that might factor into a little bit. I don't know that I'm going to read a whole lot into it. I probably should ask my colleagues from Portland, because they've been, over the years, terrific ball club at home, and that this year it's been mind-boggling how awful they've been in their own ballpark.
11-25 of the Sea Dogs and 27-46 overall. Speaking with Bob Lipman, voice of the Double-A New Hampshire Fisher Cats, and they are at home. They're hosting Portland, the Sea Dogs with all of those road woes. Bob, our question of the week, anticipated debuts. Jon Harris debuting tonight for Vancouver. Who have had the most anticipated debuts in your recollections in the minor leagues?
All right, so it doesn't have to deal with major league rehab. So we're thinking a little bit about guys being promoted along. Most recently, Marcus Stroman and Daniel Norris, certainly Sanchez as well, Aaron Sanchez. It's usually when these top of the line pitchers that you know are going to be really good get here for the first time, and you want to see what they've got for stuff, and the guys who you know who are going to be major league players someday. Stroman, I think, is so impressive because of his height, and he's had to battle that you're 5'7", if he is 5'7", you're not going to be able to get it done in the major leagues, and just to watch what he's been able to do. Daniel Norris, certainly from recent vintage, as an unusual a guy as he is, and then to watch the way that he's been able to master. And I think when the guys came over here, we've had so many great center fielders over the years. I wanted to see Anthony Ghost play baseball and to watch what he was able to do when he was in the Blue Jays organization. And to be honest, I'm pretty happy that this trade with the Tigers has worked out pretty well for both sides, with Travis coming over to the Blue Jays organization and Ghost playing well in the major leagues. So there are just a few of the names, but you never know who the next one is going to be to make it to the show, and we've had certainly our share of them here. They're just a few of them.
The true professional, Bob Lipman of the AA New Hampshire Fisher Cats. Find him on Twitter, @PulseBob. The New Hampshire Fisher Cats, nhfishercats.com. Join the Cats at their ballpark, Northeast Delta Dental Stadium, or tune in, or I guess I could say join them and tune in to Bob with the call of the game. The Fisher Cats tonight against the Portland Sea Dogs, and game time 7:05 p.m. Bob, thank you very much for taking the time.
Thank you, Jesse. More importantly, I think it's Hunger Games night here at the ballpark, and I think there's a lot of buzz about that, so we should have fun with it.
What does that mean? Does that mean something vicious, or how hungry will people be?
I think we'll find out who the winner is.
Oh, my goodness.
It's going to be a pretty
gracious.
competitive night here at the ballpark.
That's the way it sounds. Well, enjoy yourself, and yeah, all the best. Best wishes, Bob.
All right, take care, everybody. Thanks for having me on, Jesse.
From Bob Lipman in AA now to David Fine with the Class A Lansing Lugnuts. David, have you read the Hunger Games trilogy?
No. I was a little bit thrown off by that. I wonder if there's food specials. I'm still gathering myself. All I know is sometimes, Jesse, after a nice workout, I enjoy the Hunger Games as much as anyone.
I enjoy the opposite. And the books themselves, things can get just a little bit violent. David, in speaking with Marshall Kellner of the Class A advanced Dunedin Blue Jays a little bit earlier on the show, said that a scout told him, in scouting the Lugnuts, they were one of the best minor league teams that he has seen, and not just this season. Now, the Lugnuts have lost Chase DeYoung, they've lost Anthony Alford, they've lost Rowdy Tellez, all the promotion. But how special was this group in the first half?
I think it goes back to the chemistry of the group more than anything. It's one thing to win the first half Eastern Division title in a division where the East proved itself, at least against the West in interleague play, to be far superior. But the group itself is nothing if it's just talent. These players cared about each other, and you could tell that even though each is fighting to get promoted, there's no one on the team that is going to put themselves above that team concept, at least from what we saw, Jesse. And losing Chase DeYoung and Anthony Alford and Rowdy Tellez, three of those guys that fit right into the unit and all played special roles on the team. It was wonderful to see that team play in the first half, and from the Lugnuts perspective, you hope you keep it up in the second half without three of your top performers.
Well, stepping in for them, Justin Schaefer, Boomer Collins, and Alex Maldonado. Maldonado comes up from Vancouver. Boomer Collins, Justin Schaefer coming down from Dunedin. What is the new look of this Lansing Lugnut squad as we begin the second half?
I think Schaefer can provide a backstop in the bullpen. He can be a spot starter, just like how Lansing's throwing Starlene Suriel tonight. Boomer Collins hit .360 with the Lugnuts, only about 20 or so plate appearances. the Lansing offense is still darn good. They lost Rowdy Tellez 7 home runs and 49 RBIs leading the Midwest League. Collins isn't going to hit 7 home runs, you wouldn't think, but he's probably going to bat close to 300. Alex Maldonado is sort of the unknown in this just because he hasn't played with the Lugnuts yet. If anything, the Lugnuts offense and infield is still plenty strong with Richard Arañez at short. He's 12 home runs, second in the Midwest League. At first base, Ryan McBroom is leading the Midwest League in average. At second base, Tim LeCastro is the top 5 batter and the top 5 on base percentage in the Midwest League. And then Jason Leblebijian's hitting .380 in his first 17 games with the Lugnuts. So Maldonado could fit in very well if he finds some time to play, which he certainly will, but all kidding aside.
Before we turn our attentions too far away from Anthony Alford and Rowdy Tellez yet, question written in on Bluebird Banter, simply wondering, how happy were the All-Star participants regarding their experiences in Peoria?
Well, from what we heard from Ryan McBroom, he had a great experience. He won the Home Run Derby, and he drove in the first run for the East, and that ended up being the game-winning run because it was a shutout for the East over the West. And it's a good way for these players to see who else is tops in the league, and you can compare yourself a little bit. It's a fun atmosphere.
It struck me as surprising when Ryan McBroom told you that was the very first home run derby he had ever competed in.
Oh, yeah. I was a little bit shocked by that as well. If someone asked me, had I participated in the home run derby, I said, yeah, I wouldn't have hit any home runs, meaning just joking around home run derby. I'm sure he's done something like that. Everyone decides once in a while if they're playing wiffle ball or playing baseball that they want to try to hit a few home runs and just see how far they can hit it. But for a formal home run derby, I mean, McBroom only has 3 home runs this year, and even going back to his days at West Virginia, he wasn't exactly Mr. Home Run. So I'm surprised and not surprised.
Is that the next step for McBroom? He's leading the league in batting. He's getting up there on base percentage and base hits, all of these different categories. Is the next step to unlock more power?
You could look at that and say, well, what else does he have left to do? Jesse, he has that power already. I look at it as the measure of extra base hits more than home runs in a certain sense because McBroom has 23 doubles, which is, at least as of yesterday, I forgot to check today, but he was tied for first in the league going into play yesterday with 23 doubles. So he has that power. It's just a matter of if it goes 10 feet further, then he might have a home run.
The guy has been taking advantage of the right field porch. You can call it a porch stadium. He has 12 home runs, 11 of them from the left side. He's only 19. He's a shortstop, and for the fences, he's hitting the ball out. He was out homering Rowdy Tellez. Is this something with Richard Arañez? Is that power legit? Is this going to keep going?
If the question is, right, is it something? Yeah, it's something. He has 12 home runs, and he's second in the Midwest League. It's hard to believe that the feared Casey Gillespie, who's on Bowling Green in the Tampa Bay Rays organization, he's the only player with more home runs than Arañez. He steps up. He's shorter than 6 feet. He's batting from the left side when he's hitting these home runs, the switch hitter. And he's driving it. And some of them are a little bit deceptive, as in the ball goes to right field, and then you're like, oh, it's about to go out. It's not like, wow, what a beautiful, gracious moonshot. He has deceptive power, and we see it in the field as well. You could argue he's as good of a fielder as short and as important to what he brings with the Lugnuts in the field because Lansing's offense is good enough. I mean, he has 47 RBIs. He might not need to have 47 RBIs for the Lugnuts to have won the first half in the Eastern Division. Certainly a huge part of it, but his defense is so strong, too. He started more than 60 games at short.
It strikes me that that's a microcosm of the Lugnuts team. They're batting .276, they're slugging above .400, and yet that defense, surprisingly good everywhere you look, in the outfield and across the infield. There are great glove men.
Right. Gunnar Height can play third. He's a fantastic fielder. He can play short. He was a college shortstop. He only has 4 errors in the field this year. Jason Leblebijian has quite the glove that those that followed Class High A Dunedin know about. Tim LeCastro has the speed to find anything, and Ryan McBroom was a Gold Glove fielder at West Virginia.
Chris Carlson's been batting up the order. Carlson batted about 8th in the lineup for a little while there. And then it seems as if, whether it was in the last couple of weeks, whether it was his defense or his offense or his base running, Carlson really has been doing his part contributing, even in the midst of all of those top-notch prospects. Was there a change for him? Has Chris managed to find a way to insert himself and insinuate himself in helping the Lugnuts win games?
Right. Part of it is that he's been finding more holes. You look at the box score from last night. He scored a run or he was left on third, I should say, in the 7th inning last night. That was the final little bloop single that Lansing had against West Michigan. So in a certain sense, he's starting to put the ball in play in places where he can get hits, which is always going to help you, even if it's just a little punch shot where it ducks in front of one of the outfielders and he can call it lucky. Listen, Chris is hitting 300, and he's been hitting between 270 and 300 the entire year. So that's what he can do. He hits better than 300 last year in short season ball. He's a 300 hitter on the professional level. I think he's putting himself in line. If he hits 300 this year, why wouldn't he be on Dunedin next year? This is a player to watch for the Lugnuts because he's in the midst of a hot streak right now. His last 10 games, he's hitting better than 350.
With Anthony Alford, with Rowdy, Tellez, with Chase Young moving up, I think that we now are able to see more players clearly. We were talking about Ryan McBroom, not Chris Carlson. Who are other players that you think are going to come into focus? Because there's nobody overshadowing them. Now they really can step forward and take center stage.
Jesse, I was talking to you about this actually on the air yesterday, that you asked me, well, off the air, who's the player I think can really improve himself in the second half? And I said Gunnar Height. And it's because there's more time for him to play now, and Gunnar is such a terrific fielder. He has that tool down. The bat, he's hitting 170 right now, and you can look at that and say, well, there ain't no way in heck he's going to get called up next year or this year. But you know what? If he's hitting 170 right now, and then he hits 220 the rest of the season, his average is going to be like 200 or something. And you could say in the second half he bumped his average up 30 points, and he might look at it at the end of the season and say, well, I bumped my average up 30 points from first half to second half. That's not easy to do. I'm a qualifier at this point. That's a positive thing that Gunnar Height can take away, and you expect he's going to be playing more, especially down the stretch.
There's his old college teammate, too, Carl Wise, making his way through the system right now in Bluefield. We'll see if the CFC can get things going in the Toronto Blue Jays minor league system. Second half might be the half of Gunnar Height, and perhaps for Carl Wise, too. Question of the week for David Fine with the Lansing Lugnuts: anticipated debuts. What are some of the most anticipated debuts that you recollect in the minor leagues?
Boy, I have an easy answer to this, Jess, and I was thinking of it listening to some of the other answers. Just kind of hit me a minute ago that I got a chance to see Bryce Harper play in AAA Syracuse when I was going to school at Syracuse University. And, you know, Bryce Harper is Bryce Harper, and there's the hype around that no matter what he's doing, whether he's calling something a clown question or not. But Bryce Harper, when he came to Syracuse, I remember the feeling as a student of the university for the worst attended team in the International League. The Nationals AAA affiliate has been the worst attended International League team for, if you combined it over the last 10 years. When he went to Syracuse, there weren't too many more fans there, but you knew he was in Syracuse. You knew that this myth of a man was going to be in Syracuse. I remember going to a game April 15th-ish in Syracuse, which reminds a lot of people of April 15th in Toronto, or April 15th in New Hampshire, or April 15th in Lansing, Michigan. Very cold. And it was windy, and it was cloudy, and there was probably some snow in the forecast because it can snow up until about early May up in Syracuse. And I was there sitting in the upper deck with not too many fans around us watching Bryce Harper go 0 for 3. And he went 0 for 3, but man, you knew there was there was that anticipation every time he came up. There was no buzz in the crowd before he came up. The second he got up, you're ready to go. You're ready to watch this myth of a man bat. That's really what he was.
David Fine. Find him on Twitter at RealDavidFine, and listen in to David and I with the Lansing Lugnuts tonight, 7:05 p.m. first pitch. The Lugnuts hosting the West Michigan Whitecaps. Go to LansingLugnuts.com for information, too. For David in Lansing, for Rob Fay in Vancouver, Ben Wagner in AAA Buffalo, Marshall Kellner in Dunedin, Bob Lipman in New Hampshire, I'm Jesse Goldberg-Strassler. Enjoy the baseball.